on YouTube. Yeah, hello and good night. Good night. Welcome to Mindful Live 212. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. I am streaming live on TikTok, on Instagram, and over there on YouTube. You could feel free, if you are streaming this anywhere else, you could head over to YouTube and subscribe to me there. You not necessarily know whenever you want. The lives are replayed there. You could catch the lives anyone you missed. We are on live 212, so you could get a fair idea of how many lives you missed. If you are so interested in catching up, they're over there on YouTube. Good night, Richard Glubman. Tonight, we're talking crime, unfortunately. And Mr. Richard Glubman, you're the ideal guy to jump in the live right at this time, because I'm going to hit and I told you so. Well, Gigi wants to join with both PNM and UNC to discuss crime situation. Yes, I saw Double G said that, but I think that's a vain hope. I don't think we're going to see something like that happen in Trinidad and Tobago. Like, even if they come together and discuss, you're going to get something like the nonsense crime symposium we had. Good night, Auntie Do. Good night, Rennie Hazel. The crime symposium where all of these leaders came together for 2 whole days, and after those 2 days, they came out with the brilliant idea to ban assault weapons, a weapon that no citizen in Trinidad and Tobago, no citizen in the entire Caribbean really has in their possession. That's what they're banning. It's like we're worried about crime in Trinidad, and they met, and you know what we're going to ban? Nuclear weapons. There will be no nuclear weapons in the Caribbean. Okay, like, sure. Well, if you have 2868 TT, I can assure you didn't buy them legally. And just so you know, 868, if you are attempting to troll inside of the live chat, you will be muted. We don't take trolling lightly here. We are here to discuss and edify. So if you have positive things to add, you can add. You could disagree, but don't troll. We don't do that in these parts. Trolls are for under bridges. We aren't under bridges here. All right. Hey, Empress Roni Cakes. The I told you so that I have for you all tonight is for the police officers. It's not a criticism. Tonight it's not I am not the one criticizing the police tonight. I am not launching criticisms at the officers tonight. That's not what I'm doing. I am just telling officers, I told you so. I remember a couple weeks ago, and many times before, I highlighted the reality that Trinidad and Tobago, the position that we are in, if we continue in this direction, what is going to happen is people are going to blame the police. The police are going to be the first line that people aim their attacks on. Blessed night, Jonathan Charles. That's where the attacks are going to go. I said this repeatedly. And this isn't just me speaking about out of my feelings and my emotions. It's watching the world. Look at the United States. If you look at the United States over the last 10 years or so, there were movements to defund the police, abolish the police, and those kinds of movements. And those movements, you could wonder, in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, you could wonder how that makes sense. Like, who would want to abolish the police? That obviously isn't going to result in something positive. That obviously isn't going to result in something positive, at least so you think. But the reality is, if policing doesn't bring the result that the citizens want, you're going to end up with a discrepancy, and the citizens are going to kick back on it. That's just the reality. The citizens are going to kick back. And believe it or not, officers, the citizens are the boss. And if enough of them push back against the police, you are going to get some weird effects happening. And I don't want that. I look at the United States, and I look at the states and the regions where they did in fact abolish or attempt to abolish and defund the police. They took money away from the police departments. They stripped that money from them. And you saw the crime rate spike, because yes, we actually do need police. The police do a job. You could not like them, but they do a job. Good night, look at you. They do a job, and I don't want them to go away. But if the police continue acting very strict and stringent on the law-abiding citizens, making it frustrating for the law-abiding citizens, while the law-abiding citizens are living in the reality of a crime dystopia, you're going to get some pushback against the officers. It's inevitable. It is inevitable. That's just what's going to happen. You don't if I am here and I'm feeling pressure from the criminals, but then I'm feeling pressure from the police, I'm going to think to myself, it would be better for me to not have any police. The criminals aren't being stopped by the police, and all the police are doing is frustrating me and oppressing me. I'm going to decide that I don't want any police either. And I'm looking at, for example, the reactions of the law enforcement, and I understand the licensing department is under the Ministry of Works and Transport, I believe, not necessarily national security, but they are still law enforcement. And when I look at the reaction of the licensing department to the outcry from the Tobagonians, you're seeing the very same thing that they should not be doing. Instead of coming to the negotiation table and trying to understand from the citizens, what do you want from us? We serve you. How can we better serve you? You get the colonial attitude where they seem to act like we are just the powers of the colonial power, and we are here to do their bidding. That's the feeling you get from law enforcement a lot in our country and a lot in the Caribbean. The law enforcement doesn't do the bidding of the citizens, they do the bidding of the state. Like if there's some colonial power that still runs the country and that's who they work for. They're talking like the Tobagonians and their employees. Like where they're going to go back to Tobago and do the very same. What do you mean? These are the people you serve. Why are you talking like you're trying to oppress them? That doesn't make sense. And if you continue down that line, you are going to lose the support of the people. And then we would all suffer for this. Looking in Aranguez recently, I saw some of their residents coming out very personal. And this isn't something you commonly see. This is not something you commonly see in Trinidad, but they're coming out very personal, calling the name of the officer in charge for that region. Police under fire. Aranguez residents vent frustrations. Residents of Aranguez cheered loudly yesterday after it was suggested that the current head of the Northeastern Division be replaced. The call was made during an emergency crime meeting themed Taking Back Our Community, which was hosted by the Aranguez Community Council at the Aranguez Community Center, Mihilal Street, Aranguez. The medium-sized venue was packed with residents spilling out to the sides of the building. National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines was on hand to hear complaints about police and home invasions, as well as solutions put forward by participants, some of which has already worked. Also present were the former head of the Northeastern Division, ACP Winston Maharaj, and head of the Port of Spain Division, Senior Superintendent Roger Alexander, and Senior Superintendent Rishi Singh. Joe's Red Nose says the police is not the problem, the law and the judiciary is. How many times police arrest and charge persons for serious offenses and the perpetrator is freed or gets a slap on the wrist? I don't disagree with you, Joe's Red Nose. I said this before. One of the last lives I did, I focused on that problem where, yes, we do now. Don't say the police is not the problem. You sound like an officer when you say that. And one of my problems with the officers sometimes is that they are dishonest in their own description of their police force. Most officers, if you speak to them personally one-on-one, they will willingly admit to you that they have been privy to, they have seen, they know for a fact that a large portion of our TTPS is irredeemably corrupt. So let's not say the police is not the problem. We know that is not true. We know there are a lot of police that are very much the problem. How many times they arrest some of them down Grandy? Is there something in the air or the water for the police in the east? They're arresting those police down Grandy right through. Like, let's be real. So the police may not be the whole problem, but they are part of it. And yes, I agree that there is a step beyond that. I made this point in a previous life where for those of us who, some of us live in hotspot communities that are known to the police. If you live in those communities, and good night positive radiation, if you live in those communities, you would know for a fact that almost all of the bad boys, almost all of the troublemakers, have cases in front of the courts. And if that is the case, you cannot fully blame the police. If every troublemaker you meet in Trinidad and Tobago has a pending case before the courts, what that basically tells you is that at some point in time, someone of the TTPS did their job. We're waiting on the courts to do the same. So I don't deny what you're saying, Joe. I don't deny what you're saying. But this isn't even my point. My point is the reality is the police are going to be the first ones to be blamed. That is the reality. It's like the statement that you hear regularly around protesting times. Riots are the voice of the unheard. Now, riots don't work for the unheard. If your voice isn't heard and you riot, that's generally, it isn't going to bring a positive solution. It's going to make things worse. But that doesn't change the fact that when people feel like they aren't being heard, that's the direction they head in. So, be it as it may that the judiciary is partly to blame, maybe a lot to blame for the crime situation also, the reality is when people feel the pinch on the ground, the people they're going to blame first, and this was the point I was making, are the officers. The officers are the front line of that blame. Because as far as the regular citizen sees it, the person that is supposed to stop the criminal from entering my yard and disrupting my life is the police. If the criminal gets to me, the person who was supposed to be the barrier between criminal and me is the one to blame. Richard Glubman says, but police like to claim they are the answer to crime when their job is mainly after crime is committed. Yes, and I understand what you're saying, but I have a problem with that point. Regularly, some of the people who hate police, like those who say abolish police and defund police, etc., that's a point that they make, that police are only there after the crime is committed. So police do not stop crime, they come after crime is committed. So what's the point of it? The point of it is deterrence. As far as I see it, 90% of the police job is deterrence. If people know for a fact that if I do this crime, police will catch me and I will be put in front of the courts, that means that the only people that will do it will be the people who want to go to jail. Only someone who wants to go to prison will do crime. If it was sure that you were going to be caught. Detection is 85%. For which crimes, Richard Glubman? Which crimes we're talking about? Are we pulling everything together there and making some lies out of the statistics? Statistics are some strange things. That one number, I'd like to see that number broken down pretty well. Pretty well. I'd like to see that number itemized. 85%. I'd like to see the number itemized. Where can I find that statistic? I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that. Resident after resident said that the only reason the meeting was so well attended was because of their genuine fears. Earlier this month on Easter Sunday, one Arangwe's family was ambushed and held at bay for almost 30 minutes as bandits ransacked their Ramlal Trace home. The residents' WhatsApp watch group was activated, resulting in one of the men being shot dead, while 6 more, including a 14-year-old boy, were detained. 3 of the men have already been charged. This is what I mean by deterrence. This is what I mean by deterrence. If every home invasion results in the home invaders either dying, who ain't dead, badly wounded. If every home invasion ended like that, home invasions would end. These guys aren't suicidal. They're reckless, they're dangerous, they're bold, but they are not suicidal. They're not going on suicide missions. If every single home invasion was basically a suicide mission, the home invasions would end. And that's what people want from the police. People want it to be that, okay, maybe you can't stop the crime, but if it does happen, you make sure that anyone who commits the crime knows that they could never do it again. Real harsh penalties is a deterrent too. Well, the problem with real harsh penalties, Joe, is that you have to convict someone to enact the harsh penalties. So that's why I roll my eyes whenever I hear the politicians talk about legislation being brought to Parliament to fix the crime situation. How is that working? If you have a more stringent punishment for murder charge, you must first find the person guilty of murder. Good night. No conviction, no ease in crime. It's that simple. Yes, it is. So before we reach real harsh penalties, we need to dial back. We need to get enough prosecutors. Like, I find these things are low-hanging fruit. We have a problem right now. Our prosecutor's office. In case anyone in the live doesn't fully understand what the prosecutor's office is, the prosecutor is the person that, on behalf of the state, on behalf of us, goes to court and tries to get justice on our part. There aren't enough prosecutors. The prosecutor, the DPP, says that he needs something like 120 something prosecutors, and he has something like 50 something. So he has less than half of the prosecutors needed. So low-hanging fruit. Very low-hanging fruit. Easy to solve right there. But reverting to what I was saying, this is what the police is going to face more of. The police is going to face much more of this. We saw some of this already I saw a meeting in Felicity in Shoguana's region, and they had a former inspector, Johnny Abraham. He was there and he was criticizing the police. Very interestingly, in this meeting also, while they were criticizing the current leader of that division, they had the former leader of the division also in the meeting in attendance also. So you're getting some of that. And the criticism is going to come heavier and heavier and heavier. And to me, the police need to figure out how they're going to deal with that. How are you actually going to deal with this? Because the kind of attitude I see from the Commissioner of Police, where they basically copy and paste the same thing that we've been hearing since Philbert, that's... You all know, for those of you who have been in enough of the lives, I complain about the kind of commissioners we choose right out of the batch mill out of the TTPS, and it's like the same thing, copy and paste over and over and over. It's like you could have made an AI clone of the last commissioner, of the Commissioner Philbert, and make that AI clone for every commissioner since then, probably excluding Gary Griffith. Like, nothing unique, nothing different. The press conferences, they say the same thing. We're really focusing on crime, and we understand you may be worried, but the police are putting their best foot forward, and they have to do something different. Because apparently the gangs are doing something different too. You look at the robberies now. That's part of the problem. And to me, it's kind of a recreation of what happened in the early 2000s with the kidnappings. The kidnappings started and were proliferated based on gang activity. They weren't the regular one-by-one street hustler, street criminal, lifelong criminal who's going out there and kidnapping people. They were organized gangs, and they were making an organized business out of this. And similarly, that's what we're seeing right now. These guys doing the home invasions. Look at it. Look at the guys doing the home invasions. It's not one guy. It's not two guys. It's a gang. It's guys from a gang. They are all members of one gang, probably working on instructions, going out there to do these home invasions. Our TTPS can't solve intellectual crimes. Good night, guys. Adato Studios. Adato Studios. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Our TTPS can't solve intellectual crimes. What are you trying to say, Adato? What are you trying to say by that? But yeah, they have to do something different. If they don't, the TTPS is going to just be losing more and more of the public's confidence. And as they lose more of the public's confidence, their job is going to become more difficult. And then they are going to be blamed even more. And then they are going to lose more of the public's confidence. And you're going to get in a downward spiral, racing to the bottom. Good luck being an officer in those times. Many of those things head in one of two directions. They either head in the direction of like the United States, where you have people looking for the heads of the police. They're trying to get your legal head and trying to dismantle the police service. Or they head in the direction of Haiti, where the government of Haiti, the police are no longer in control of the country. I saw a news story coming out of Haiti. Mob in Haiti capital burns to death 13 suspected gangsters. That's the kind of direction the lawlessness heads in. A mob in the Haitian capital beat and burned 13 suspected gang members to death with gasoline-soaked tires Monday after pulling the men from police custody at a traffic stop, police and witnesses said. The horrific violence underlined the increasingly lawless situation in Port-au-Prince, where criminal gangs have taken control over an estimated 60% of the city since the July 2021 assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. And I mean, we have something, they call it normalcy bias, where we look out at things like this, we look out at Haiti and we like, I mean, that's Haiti, that could never be Trinidad, things like that could never happen in Trinidad. But the piece that always alarms me, there was a murder in Arima. Someone was running down a guy, 60 shots from a high-powered rifle. Apparently they didn't connect one with their intended target, killed 2 women. That kind of activity is stuff you expect in Haiti. That level of lawlessness, where someone could run down the road, shoot off a high-powered rifle in daylight over 60 times, and then that person has no consequence. That guy who shoot the more than 60 shots is currently boasting to his fellow gang members about that. Probably telling one of their loyal Trinidad artists about how to write it into a song. How I let off the 60 shots and the police can't catch me yet. And that's the problem. That right there is the problem. It's not the 60 shots in and of itself. If it was that 60 shots, a man released 60 shots, but as soon as he did it, the police caught him. Because in Trinidad and Tobago, you cannot let off 60 shots. No, that wasn't in Shogunas, that was in Arima. You cannot let off 60 shots, killing 2 innocent women, killing 2 women, and get away with it. But apparently you can. Maybe as part of that same feud in Arima, about a month or a month and a half ago, there was an attempted murder right outside the shops of Arima. Broad daylight. One of the busiest areas in the country, a shopping center. An attempted murder. The people were not caught. Yes, Just Data. I know the region. And I am not a police. I am not a detective. I am not a police. I am not a detective. I am not a gangster. I don't live in Arima. And just from reading the news, it could seem pretty clear what is going on in Arima. You could read the surnames of the targets and you start to get a picture. If you know about drug crime in Trinidad in the 90s in Arima, and then you follow some of what is going on right now, it becomes very clear what it seems to be going on in Arima. And for some strange way, you could read the news and decipher that, but for some strange reason, the police in the east are unable to dismantle what is happening. innocent people, children are being shot. And what I'm saying is, this is the direction this would be headed in. And yeah, Richard, you call names, I won't. Woo. You call names, I won't. But yeah, and when I see sometimes some of how the police react to some of this, where to me the biggest problem in Trinidad is trust. People talk about the police need vehicles, etc., etc. I think the biggest problem in Trinidad and Tobago is trust. With policing, the citizens of this country do not have a trusting relationship with the police service of this country. It's not a difficult thing to do. I should probably make a video about this. That's probably a good topic. I can go in Shogunas, go in Port of Spain, go in Arima, go in San Fernando, and stop random people and ask them, if you see a crime being committed, do you feel safe reporting that crime to the police? And see how many people say yes. I could tell you, I live in a community where there are quite a few drug blocks, and you ask anyone in the community about reporting to the police, they will tell you, no, I like my life. So the police, they know some of the things they need to do. And one of the things that would make that much easier, I've seen many people talk about this, would be body cams. And for some strange reason, our police are intent to not have the body cams. Police officers demand body cam training. Well, you go ahead, Rennie. While the Police Complaints Authority is happy that Commissioner of Police Earl Christopher Harewood has sounded the call for body cameras to be worn, her officers are hoping to receive necessary and continuous training in their use. On Monday, that's last Monday, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service said there are currently 1,120 body-worn cameras in circulation, and the Commissioner has given explicit instructions to all divisional heads and heads of units and sections regarding the mandatory use of body-worn cameras by officers who were issued with such devices. And yet still, they are not being used. You know, when I was having the discussion with the officers about them disobeying orders that make no sense when they oppress the population, I remember some officers talking about dereliction of duty and they would have consequences to face for that. So, you know, they have to do that. And it's strange to me. It's strange to me. How, no, we won't disobey an order if it's about oppressing the generals. Well, let me not say they won't. Maybe and very likely some police officers do. But many officers won't. No, we can't disobey an order. An order is an order, even if it's oppressive to the general population. But you're ordered to wear body cameras, but now because all our batch say, no, we not wearing that. We not wearing that. All of a sudden, the orders mean nothing. Speaking with Guardian Media, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Social and Welfare Association, Gideon Dixon, said their only concern at this time is the issue of training. Dixon said the last time they were trained was several years ago and it was a one-off event. He said, we would want all our officers who have been trained in the past and have not utilized the gadgets over the last 3 months to at least be given a refresher course in the training of the apparatus and be certified, and then thereafter, be it on a 6-month or yearly basis, we can have a recertification course so best practice could be developed and maintained. You all believe this? Like, we need training to use a body camera. These police have smartphones. They have smartphones with multiple apps. You could switch between WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook Messenger. But you don't understand how to turn a body camera off and on. Like, Oh, like really. That's what we're going with. We need recertification in body camera usage. Like Richard, you're one that generally you attempt to see the side of the officers. You're going along with this. You're buying this one. You're believing this one, really? Like, you know, someone said something about intellectual crimes and the police and stuff there, and there's a running insult many people give to the police about their intellectual capacity and their IQ, etc., etc., etc. This kind of thing, you're insulting your fellow officers, man. You're leading our TTPS into disrepute. Like, how are you gonna say that you need special training every 6 months? It's 6 months, he said, right? Yeah. They have to be it on a 6 month or yearly. Be like don't do it, Anna. Come, Mr. Dixon officer, so don't do it, Anna. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You have a better reason. And like, you must understand, when the public sees the level of pushback against the body cameras, the public is going to get a conclusion from that. Like, what conclusion do you expect the public to get from the police not wanting to wear body cameras? Dawood says the fact he came on TV and was upset with the fiancé for plastering charged officers in the media. Yeah, like bro, the public is going to get a conclusion from this. How you expect the public to? And then again, what you're going to do when the public sees the TTPS refusing the body cameras, the public is again going to lose trust. And again, we reinforce the same cycle. We lose more trust. Why is the TTPS doing that? Like, to me, okay. If the police union, I know the police isn't supposed to have a union and they don't call themselves a union, but that's the police union. Let's be honest about it. If the police union was serious about wanting training, this would be something that they would write in a letter to the commissioner. You wouldn't come out to the media and release a statement that the police, we can't use the body cameras yet because we haven't been trained for them. Dawood Mr. Max says he was disappointed with charge officers being plastered across the media. His recent morale of the service. This isn't the first time he did that. I spoke about that previously. When the case, I believe that was with the officer in Diego Martin, where he was shot by his fellow officers allegedly, and you see the reaction of him to that, the disappointment and hurt. The disappointment and hurt wasn't in the officers doing illegal activities. The disappointment and hurt was in the officers being charged and dragged before the courts and the moral of the service. Like, these are the things that upset me about the police continually. That's why people say the police act as a gang, because when you hear them speak, it's never about the law of the land. It's never about bringing up decreasing criminality. It's about boosting the police. You know, the police and as it were the brotherhood of the police. Everything is for the brotherhood of the police. If it's a matter of making ourselves look bad and setting up someone for a crime, we aren't going to look bad. You're going to have to get the setup. Again, what does that do? Decrease the trust in police. You get the feeling like you could call the police program that shows every day on TV, and you could outline the most heinous act of criminality that you underwent by a police officer, and the strong senior police officer on the television is going to find a way to excuse it. And what does that do? Decrease the trust in police. Like, can you imagine that? Imagine that in the health service. Imagine that in the health service. Imagine every time something went wrong in the health service, someone picked up an infection when they went to the hospital, they're always looking for a way to blame you. They're always looking for a way to blame you. And people are going to start to get very scared of the health service. I remember there was a point in time, and if we're being honest, if we're looking at things honestly, this did pull back. There was a point in time where Mount Hope was being called Mount Hopeless. There were deaths after deaths after deaths happening there. And then something they did, and it changed. There was a time the perception of Mount Hope was, if you had a child, don't go there. But now that's no longer the perception, and I'm talking about within like a decade ago. And these are things that happen. You can't change that perception. You can change that perception. Now, the problem with some of this is the policies overarching it all. What penalties other countries have in place for errant/rogue officers? Other countries like, which countries you speak about specifically? To me, it's not about the penalties for the errant or rogue officers, because if an officer commits theft, there's already a law on the law books to prosecute him for theft. This again, I think is misdirecting the focus. So it's not like we need to go to Parliament to pass laws to prosecute police when they do something wrong. No, we need to be able to get law enforcement to enforce the laws against the police when they break the laws that are already on the law book. So the problem here isn't finding the right penalties for the officers. The problem here is creating a structure in the police that weeds out the people who are breaking the law already. Maybe no, I don't think harsher penalties are needed. I think you actually need to penalize them. How many officers are found guilty of a crime? How often does that happen? Like, I'm not talking about charged. I'm talking about go through the entire thing and they're found guilty. If you increase the penalty, it only works after you find them guilty. So, if you cannot find them guilty, having harsher penalties doesn't work. What you need is a better structure to actually catch them. So, for one, I find the fact that the Professional Standards Bureau comes directly out of the police service to be ludicrous. I think the Professional Standards Bureau should... You could put that under the office of the president. You understand what I mean? Put it under the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force even. Something else, something totally outside the realm of policing, so that they do not have any semblance of loyalty to the police. I want the Professional Standards Bureau. I want the Professional Standards Bureau to work adversarially against the police. You see how the police work assiduously to try and convict and try and prove someone committed a crime? That's how I want the Professional Standards Bureau to work. But I don't think they do, because the PSB officers would have their badge too. The PSB officers would have badge. They would be in the WhatsApp group with their badge. Information would be passing along that thin blue line. There's a huge problem with the culture within the TTPS, and it starts in the barracks. Yes, I agree. Nah, PSB serious. Is it? Because I remember reading, and Rachel Glubman, you were in this live too, you were in the live with this, where we read about the land troubles that some people were having up in the east. And they spoke about dropping the complaint directly to the Professional Standards Bureau because some law enforcement officers were involved. And they had the receipts of dropping it to the PSB, and nothing came of it. You remember that one? Do you remember that one? So, as much as I would like to believe that the PSB is serious, if the PSB comes out of the same batch, is the same batch, guys. How? No office in this country is independent. Understand this. I agree to some extent, but I do think that you can create relationships that are naturally more adversarial. So, for example, the opposition versus the government, that's naturally adversarial. So, that's what I want. A system where the people who look in... So, why can't the PSB be the enforcement arm for the PCA? Because you know the PCA has no legal teeth. The PCA has no officers that they could send out there. Why can't the PSB be the enforcement arm for the Police Complaints Authority? Why can't it have that structure? The PSB working, but when they arrest and charge, beyond that, it's the law and the judiciary. I agree. Again, the same problems that we have with the judiciary. So that was the point I was making previously. How often do you see officers convicted, not just charged? Because there's quite a distance between charged and convicted, and sometimes the public falls off the case. But follow up some of those cases where officers were charged. And very often strange things happen. Very often the witnesses all of a sudden no longer want to testify. So even officers who are charged, oftentimes they are not convicted. It's like they just train them to run in the barracks and forget to teach critical thinking skills. Well, it's a loss of balance, I think, because in order for policing to work, you do need that sense of brotherhood. You want, I mean, if I was an officer and I'm going to kick down a door, I want to know that the guys I'm with, I can trust, that they have my back. We are risking our lives on a daily. I understand that. You want that sense of brotherhood. But I think they overshot, because you do not want to make a gang. It's a job at the end of the day. You want the brotherhood, but you don't want to make a gang. And I think they basically make a gang. Crime in Trinidad is strategic, bro. It's all planned. Dawood says, and his murder case, not a word. Internal Affairs is police investigating police. Yes, it is. It is police investigating police. More of the same. But oh, I was getting stuffy there. Does Trinidad have something like an FBI or CSI that is not made of regular officers? No. We have the SSA, but pretty much all in any agency in Trinidad and Tobago where law enforcement is being done, you have a police officer, law enforcement officer from the police service inside there. So I don't think we have any outside law enforcement. So like some of the only outside law enforcement we may have is like the customs. Some of those customs officers have lots of legal law enforcement authority. The licensing officers, some of them, lots of legal law enforcement authority. Isn't it the SSA? Or is it the SSS? The one with Rishmi and all of that now, that agency that they're alleging had the Pegasus software and all of this. You guys shares, nice program, bro. Hope to join in next time. Lawful citizen need to work. Good night. Understood completely, brother. Understood completely. I do this generally speaking every weeknight from 9:30 p.m. thereabout. So feel free to join in. Your presence is welcome. Now, moving on from there, though, moving on from the police. Part of the problem is the policy. Like, I remember Mr. Hines saying that, you know, he isn't responsible for the day-to-day runnings. It's the policy. He's responsible for the policy. And I understand he's right. But then when I hear the policy coming out from the politicians, I must roll my eyes. CARICOM heads agree to ban assault weapons, to write letter to US seeking support on arms reduction. CARICOM leaders are moving to ban public's use of assault weapons and have also promised to write to the US government to demand a stronger effort to prevent the flow of guns into the region and to stand with CARICOM the same way CARICOM stood by the US in their war on drugs. The point I made when we previously read this. Hey, Akinde man, what's going on? Thanks, brother. The point I made when we previously said this. We want the US to work with us like we worked with them on their war on drugs. Did they win the war on drugs? Did they win the war on drugs? No, they did not. So if we want them to work with us like we worked with them on the war on drugs, you're basically saying that we want them to work with us in an exercise of futility. We want them to spin top in mud with us, just like we did with the war on drugs. The war on drugs made many drug dealers very rich. It killed a lot of people. It imprisoned a lot, but I don't think it did anything. It created a net positive for any society. I don't see it. I don't see it. RL says, why don't America just ban production of guns? There are many reasons for that. One, they have the Second Amendment, which prevents the US government from controlling the citizens' access to guns. Two, so I don't know how you understand human history, but any government attempting to fully control the use of weapons, people start to look at that government suspiciously. The US government doesn't want to touch that. Also, the US has more guns than people. So even if you ban the production of guns, there are already enough guns to do all that they need to do. So no, it's not going to work. And then you cannot ban the production of guns because the technology on how to produce guns has already been out there for far too long. Too many people know how to make it. You cannot stop all of them from making it. They figured that out when they tried to ban the production of alcohol. Okay, alcohol is bad. What we're going to do? Ban it. Well, when people know how to make it, how do you ban them from making it? Saying that someone cannot do something doesn't actually stop them from doing it. You have to go out there and physically prevent them from doing it. That's the law enforcement side. And that's why all these ridiculous bans on guns and illegal guns make no sense. They make no sense. In Trinidad and Tobago, the public, it's very difficult for us to get guns. But yet we are one of the top 5s or top 10s in murders in the world. With no gun production here and no legal guns. How? How do you think that happens? Because you cannot ban things like that. You have to actually go out there and stop it from happening. Here's what our Prime Minister said. Addressing their move to ban the use of assault weapons from civilian populations, Prime Minister Rowley explained that over the years, these weapons have slowly been licensed to the civilian population. I would like Prime Minister Dr. Rowley to inform the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago how many licensed assault weapons are out there in Trinidad and Tobago. How many are there? And then inform us how many of them were ever used in the perpetration of a crime. What's your point? What's the point of this? The crime symposium, because crime is out of control. The conclusion, the grand conclusion that is celebrated across the Caribbean is something banned that has always basically been banned for the Caribbean. What? Dr. Rowley said, We are saying that we do not require those weapons within our society in a commonplace way because of the outcome of the presence in the society. We can continue to provide protection with small number of handguns in the population. If that's so, if that is so, we can continue to provide protection with a small number of handguns in the population. Does that mean that all of our police service and defense force are only going to use handguns from now on? Are the MP5s going to be retired from the police service, seeing as we don't need those kinds of guns to protect us in society? I wonder. Some of you who have seen the Prime Minister's security detail, are there any people in the Prime Minister's security detail who have long guns, assault weapons? And why does he need assault weapons to protect himself? According to the Prime Minister, Trinidad doesn't need it. We don't need any of that. How come he does? And RL, when you talk about banning the production of guns, that's one of the discussions people always have, the questions people always have. Okay, so you as a government minister, as a government official, you want to go out there and say that I cannot have a weapon to defend myself. But very strangely, everywhere you go, you have multiple weapons to defend yourself. So if it is that guns are not needed to defend people, why are there guns defending you? Because he goes to other countries? No, but I'm talking about in Trinidad. If it was that he only had his protective detail when he's in other countries, okay, then that's a reason. But he has his protective detail in Trinidad and Tobago too. I wouldn't doubt that when the Prime Minister's family, his wife, his daughters, when they go out, I wouldn't doubt that there might be men with guns with them too. And if he is saying, like, you know, we don't need guns to protect us in this society, then why do you need men with guns to protect you? It's the hypocrisy. It's the hypocrisy of it all, where basically what they're saying is that we are more important than you. We deserve more protection than you, and you don't deserve that level of protection. And on the side of this banning of assault weapons, that's nonsense. This is a waste of our taxpayers' money. I wonder how many tax dollars were spent to host this 2 days symposium. How many $1 million was spent for that? Which caterer made the food and the finger foods and the hors d'oeuvres and went away with a couple $1,000 for this waste of money? We went through all of this to come out to say we're going to ban assault weapons. Yes. And when I listened to some of the people during the symposium and how people spoke about crime, I saw the inner city areas need more investment was one of the claims from the private sector department. They said that there needs to be more investment in these areas. You know, the communities, they don't have enough money, they don't have enough opportunity. These are downtrodden communities. We need to invest more money in the communities. That's the solution to crime. And people said that over and over and over again. I appreciated, though, the response I saw from Vinci Prime Minister. Because I disagreed with it. I agree with the Vinci Prime Minister here. Vinci PM, some crimes done to mind high maintenance women. That's what the man said. Some crimes done to mind high maintenance women. This isn't Nathan Springer saying this. This is the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves. There are many root causes of crime as agreed by several heads of state at the CARICOM Symposium on Crime. But St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves said one of the reasons youths are picking up guns to commit crimes is to keep providing the lifestyle for high-maintenance pretty women. He said for most criminals, a life of crime was a choice. They chose to be murderers and kill, and they do so by and large because they want to make some easy money dealing drugs and running crime, he said. Some of them, in order to maintain rank in the community, they get a fascination with guns. They associate with young women, in some cases beautiful young women, who are high maintenance, and they have to rob and steal and kill and deal in drugs in order to maintain them. Everybody here, he went on, everybody here knows what I'm talking about here is the absolute truth, he insisted. What I am talking here, people in the taverns across Trinidad and Tobago are talking about. Well, it's time we spoke about it here. He dismissed the perceived social effects of crime, poverty, prejudice, and a lack of access to opportunities. He said if people were really that frustrated, they would kill themselves instead of turning to crime and killing others. Preach! Preach, Vince CPM, preach, because this is the point that I keep making. This is the point that frustrates me over and over. When I see people always try to make it seem like every criminal is Aladdin. You know, every criminal is really Aladdin out there. They're poor and hungry, and the reason they're doing all of this is just to get a morsel to eat. A little, but just a little morsel. But just a little morsel. I disagree. You look at many of the criminals, because they catch these criminals. You can look at their families. You can look at their homes. These men, these young men, are not coming from homes where they do not have food to eat. You could blame a lack of parenting. You could blame a lack of guidance. Yes. But the reason they are doing crime isn't because of a lack. Isn't because of poverty. Isn't because they didn't have access to schooling. It's a choice, as the Prime Minister rightfully said. And the reason I think what he's saying there is so important is because it reorients how we deal with crime. Because when we do this whole pandering, well, the hungrier is Aladdin and he monkey really robbing people for a morsel of bread to eat. When we do that nonsense, we have sometimes too much sympathy for criminals. While really and truly a big part of the solution to crime is locking up more people. Take the people committing crime, throw them in jail, do not let them out. Simple like that. And crime is going to decrease. But we have the idea that no, it's not just that. We need more social workers. We need to go into the community and give them outreach and play night football and night cricket with them and build a basketball court and build a community center. I am not saying these things are not needed. I am not saying these things don't help, but the reality is the people who do crime aren't doing it because there isn't basketball or cricket to play. Capitalism, people fight for status and riches where they can get it. I disagree, because if that was true, then crime would only exist in capitalist countries. Crime exists in every country that has ever existed. Crime is human nature. Crime is a human wants what another human has and wants it without doing the work. It's that simple. Simple like that. And if people have the opportunity to do it, there are many people who have the proclivity that they will do it. If they have the opportunity to take from someone else without consequence, many people will do it. You don't need capitalism to do that. Some countries, it is quite low, however. If you look at the countries where crime is quite low, there are usually several things in common. It's homogeneous, meaning most of those countries have one ethnic group, one religious group, oftentimes. That's how you get it. You want crime to be low also? you need, generally speaking, less wealth disparity. Not necessarily people to be rich, but you don't want people to be super rich and people to be super poor. But oftentimes when you have the super rich and super poor, what that generally shows is that you have a corrupt society. Have you ever read about Cuba? Crime is very low there because everybody poor. Well, if everybody poor, you have nothing to rob. Who are you going to rob from? And if there aren't any guns, they can't afford the guns. So, and in other countries where crime is low, it's because of good law enforcement. That's the other thing. Crime low in Cuba because crime got consequence. Yeah, and because they're poor. Because they're poor partly also. But consequence certainly pulls away from crime. Now, the last story for the evening. Tanti CLIMBS trying to get my vote. Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar is out here legitimately trying to get my vote. Listen to this headline. Kamala, UNC government will bring stand your ground law. Opposition leader Kamala Prasad-Bissessar said if the UNC comes back into power, it will bring stand your ground legislation to parliament to combat home invasions and give the population a sense of security. Stand your ground law, sometimes referred to as line in the sand or no duty to retreat law under American legal statutes, provides that people may use deadly force when they reasonably believe it necessary to defend against certain violent crimes. Now, Gersh asks, stand your ground law mean we own iron? That's my question too. Because when I look at it seriously, stand your ground law changes nothing in Trinidad and Tobago. As it stands, stand your ground law changes nothing in Trinidad and Tobago. When last in Trinidad and Tobago, you heard that a businessman shot someone with a legal firearm and then got into legal trouble? You don't get into legal trouble in Trinidad and Tobago for that. That's not where the problem is. Stand your ground law is needed, especially in a place like the United States, where they are very litigious, and people are going to sue you for it. So you need legal protection for when you use your firearm. But in Trinidad and Tobago, if someone breaks into your home right now in Trinidad and Tobago and you fill them with holes, the police would come take your statement and leave you be. Do you hear people getting into trouble for shooting people that come into their homes in Trinidad and Tobago? So I think, Miss CLIMBS, as much as I like the direction you are speaking, I think this is the wrong starting point. We need to get the weapons first. She says, we will bring legislation in Parliament to create a specific criminal offense of home invasion, which will involve increasing the sentences for larceny, burglary, serious assault, unlawful entry to your properties, whether it be your homes or businesses, and that you will be able to use force. They, the criminals, come using force with guns, cutlasses, whatever it may be. So we propose the specific offense, and we will create that offense with a penalty of 25 years in jail. We need to protect our homes against the barbarians at the gates. She noted that currently the law says people should use reasonable force in defending their property. Man coming with gun in your face and you must do nothing. As I said, I don't think this is the problem right now in our legal framework. I don't think that's the problem. Take your firearm as well too for investigation. Yes, they do, but they get it back pretty quickly. I've been reading news solidly for a long time, and I cannot remember once in Trinidad someone using their legal firearm in defense of themselves and then getting dragged before the courts for any kind of long drawn out process. That does not happen in Trinidad and Tobago. So I don't think stand your ground law is what we need here. We need, to me, what is needed is legislation that clearly stipulates the criteria for qualifying for a legal firearm. And we need legislation that states the state must grant the license once someone is qualified. So, because I believe the legislation now is a kind of, the state may grant the license, which means the state doesn't have to grant the license. But I think we need language in our legislation that says the state must grant the license or cannot refuse the license if someone meets whatever the criteria might be. That's the kind of legislation I think we need. Stefan just says she in better direction than others do. Correctly. She is in the correct direction. Earl Panton says it will turn all robberies into death encounters with more collateral deaths. It might for the first 3 robberies, but how many robbers do you think are going to go into someone's house? If, all right, let's look through the line of news. We allow easier firearm ownership in Trinidad. We have 1 6-person break-in. 3 of the bandits are dead. The bandit returned fire and killed 1 of the occupants of the home. But 3 of the bandits are dead. 2 of them are wounded. And the last one was captured. Okay. That's 1. That break news on a Monday. Then Wednesday, our next gang go out and try it. This time 3 men went out. All 3 dead. Then Friday, our next one went out. Okay. 4 men went out. They killed the homeowner. But the homeowner got off 2 shots. 1 was injured. The 2 escaped and 1 was captured. It starts to increase the price of this home invasion on the bandits. And the problem is, as it stands, people are already paying the consequence with their life. People are already being hurt and murdered in home invasions. So if you tell people, okay, here's what we can do. If I am a bandit, I will come in shooting because I can't take any chances. Really? Really, Earl Panton? Do you believe that's what's going to happen? That a bandit doing a home invasion now is going to come in shooting at your door, bang, 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 bursting, you know, bang, 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 bang. That's a foolish bandit because it's the dark in the night and it's your home. You're going to go through the side door, come through the guest room and put a bullet in his head. He cannot come through the door shooting. He will sell out his location. Coming through the door shooting doesn't help the bandit. The bandits need to sneak in to catch you by surprise. So, coming through the door shooting doesn't help them. Bro, people does commit robberies and instincts and hot blood. I don't think they think logically. That's only partially true. That's only partially true. Because you see it in many countries, in most countries, where once prosecution and detection for a crime increases, the level of the crime decreases. So in the United States right now, they decreased prosecution in New York and in California for shoplifting. You will not be prosecuted. Surprise, surprise, shoplifting ballooned to an amazing level. So high that Walmart is closing in some of those places. Surprise, surprise. So although yes, there is a hot blood side to it, there's also a thinking logical side. Bandits don't rob random houses. They stalk the house. They look for easy prey. If you go, and I mean, an officer in the life could say this. Officers regularly come to speak to people on what you do to not make yourself a soft target. Because bandits go at soft targets. If bandits were just doing things randomly, they wouldn't aim for soft targets only. They look for soft targets because they don't want trouble. I mean, yeah, that's how it goes. What it's like, I mean, I don't even understand fully this argument, you know, like armed guards, people with guns in a place deter bandits. Like, why do you think the bank has armed guards in it? If bandits don't listen to logic, they just work on hot blood. Why do you think the bank has armed guards and there aren't a whole lot of Billy the Kid bank robbers out here trying it? Why? Because they could see the guys with the big long guns standing in the banks. The first encounter will result in a shootout. Firearm owners can potentially become targets. Yes, yes, yes. They are already targets, Earl Panton. They are already targets. Like, I don't understand this logic. where, okay, it would become so dangerous for the firearm owners when our murders are 600 per year. The bandits are already killing people with impunity. What is the fear here? Do you think there's a bandit in Trinidad and Tobago that does not have access to a gun if he wants one? Do you think that's so? Little Miss Mediator says family court matters could get real scary with more guns in homes, so we have to tread carefully. That, Little Miss Mediator, but I guess with a name like Miss Mediator, I could see why. That is an important one. I think that is the most important issue. Like, people talk about regular squabbles between neighbors. I don't think that's going to result in gun. People already have lethal weapons, you know. People have cutlasses, people have knives. A car is a lethal weapon. How often do you see people pick up their car and bounce down someone they're angry with? That doesn't happen every day. Now, the reality is, it does happen sometimes. So, you are going to have some cases where you are going to increase the use of guns. That's a reality you're going to face. So, here's a question in this. If making gun ownership in Trinidad and Tobago becomes less of a legal hurdle, it's not easy, but it's less of a legal hurdle. And what it causes is much more deaths of bandits, but moderately more deaths in regular person-to-person, one-on-one interpersonal grouses. So we go from a 600 plus murder rate to 200 murders. But of the 200, 100 of those are regular everyday citizens getting into squabbles. Would that be an okay trade-off for you? Our murder rate dropped by 400. But yeah, we have some, every now and again you hear about a man, he lose it, he get a mental break, he pick up his gun, and yeah, there are some of those cases. It happens. It's going to happen. Which one would you be more okay with? Would you be more okay with living in the country with over 600 murders and daily home invasions? Or would you be okay with 200 murders, no home invasions, and some strange shootings every now and again? You're going to end up with cases like right now in the US where a young man went to an elderly man's home trying to pick up his twin siblings and he was shot twice. You're going to get some of those. That's going to be a trade-off. I am not saying that if you have legal firearms, you won't have any of those. You will. But is that a trade-off you'd be okay with? Because as it stands right now, the criminals already have the guns. The bad guys have the guns. If you make firearm ownership less legally difficult, what you're mostly going to do is give good guys guns. The bad guys already have the guns. So it's like, I don't understand how people are worried for legalizing, because weapons are already legal, for making the process easier. People are so worried about that because they're worried the bad guys are going to get guns. But the bad guys already have the guns. Like, what is the worry here? Do you think any bad man you're watching in your neighborhood doesn't already have his piece on him? Ever heard about gentrification? Yes, I did a video on gentrification. So yes, I have heard about gentrification. I don't understand the relevance in this. If you're talking about building up the communities and they would call it gentrification, then I understand if that's what you're talking about. But in Trinidad and Tobago, the community development that some people talk about isn't necessarily the solution. More law-abiding citizens having legal firearms will drastically outnumber the bad. I agree. We'll have much more good people with weapons and they will outnumber the bad people with weapons. And I think that's a good thing in my society. Like, when I think about this and I look through my community, I know there are probably some people with guns. The guys with guns are the ones I don't want with guns. If we make gun ownership easier, and I look through my community and I see the homes with the nuclear family, and I think, okay, Mr. Beckles, Mr. George, Mr. Harry, Mr. Singh, Mr. Rajkumar, all of them are going to have weapons in my community. Would that make me more scared in my community, or would that make me feel safer? I think that would make me feel safer in my community. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I trust the people in my community more than you. But I am telling you, I would feel safer with that in my community. That's the quote of the night. The guys with the guns are the ones I don't want to have the guns. Exactly. They already are. All right, people. It's 11 o'clock and I'm sweating. So that's about all I have for now. If there are no other questions or comments, I can dive out any further questions or comments inside of the live. That's all I have for now there. Well, there's also the concept, if we get guns, the bad guys get bigger guns. but RL, bigger guns like what? Like, the bad guys are shooting AR-15s with high-powered 5.53 rounds. What we need is high penalties for illegal firearms. Sugar fingers, come now, man, sugars. Come now, man, sugar fingers. We have some drastically high penalties for illegal firearms. The problem is, one, they don't catch them very often. And two, there are just too many. The same thing we said about the penalties before. For penalties to work, you have to catch the people. You can make it that the penalty for illegal firearms is death. If we catch you with an illegal gun, we kill you. But if you never catch them, what's going to happen? And in the meantime, while we're talking about, well, higher penalties for firearms, well, we need to have a war on guns. We need to take the guns out of the people's hands. And the police are out there boasting, we took 60 guns off the streets for the year already. 60 guns off the streets. Those obviously aren't enough. I don't think those gangsters are missing the guns you took. I don't think they're missing the guns. Because they haven't started pelting people with big stones yet. They haven't reverted to big stones and cutlasses. Trinix says, if you come to developed areas, land and homeowners are selling out at a lower price because of crime. Border security is the central issue. I don't even think border security is the central issue personally. Criminals simply probably bought back those guns from the police. Well, again, you're just saying it more for me. To me, it's a simple equation, and I've said it so many times before. If you could create a society with no guns, then fine. I don't need a gun. Cool. If the bandits stop me on the street and say, put them up, well, cool. Let me box it out. I'm cool with that. Or even if it's all swords, I get my long sword. Yeah, Jimmy King, you heard something on that? If you hear something on that, make sure to tell me. I have my long sword and we all have long swords. Fine. But if you have a society where the bad guys have the guns, how are you going to tell me that I can't? Because, you know, we're banning guns in Trinidad and Tobago because we don't want the bad guys to have the guns. And the bad guys have the guns. You know, it feels like it's actually from Brazil in 2020. Ha! I felt it was a fake story, and I felt it was a fake story. You know, it feels like we're in a fight, and the bad guys and the good guys are in a fight. And the government comes and holds down the good guy and say, oh, let's stop fighting. Stop that fight. Break up this fight. Break up this fight. Hold down the good guy arms. Hold my two arms behind my back. And the bandit them coughing up with face. And the police like, no, we can't let go your hand. We can't let go your hand. Otherwise, it would have fighting in the country. We don't want fighting to happen in the country, so we must hold your hand back. And the criminal working in your jaw. Your teeth fall out, your lip bust up, your tongue slice, you're bleeding out your mouth, the blood leaking down all your beard and looking embarrassing. The police like, sir, we can't let go your hand. We don't have fighting in the country. You understand what I'm saying? It feels like injustice. It feels like they're helping the criminals here. I could tell you the criminals aren't that stupid. If there are guns in homes, criminals are not going to blindly run in. Full stop. All right. I hope you guys were educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful Live. I am your host, Nathan Spring. I do this usually every weeknight around that 9:30 p.m. starting time. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. Actually, I would not be here tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening is a very special day for me and my special lady. So you would not see me tomorrow evening. But Wednesday, I'm here for the Tobago nights. We'll be here back again Wednesday night. See you guys then. As usual, this was the Mindful Live. I reached late and I didn't see. Hard luck, bro. Head over to YouTube. You could head over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring, over there on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. I haven't said this in a long time, but all of these lives are brought to you by Mindful Education, Mindful_education, Mindful with 2 L's, as written on my t-shirt. You could find us over on Instagram if you are interested. We provide learning pods for children, students from the ages preschool goes straight up to CXC. Learning pods are basically homeschool styled educational classes, or in person alone. We do in person for our learning pods. We also provide personal tutoring, one-on-one tutoring with specialized tutors for those fields, all CXC subjects or CAPE subjects. If you are interested in those, be sure to hit us up. Mindful Education over there on Instagram, or message me wherever you see me. Mindful Education. Until the next time, folks, peace out. Laters. Hold it down. Stay safe. Peace.